Hi, this is Tim of the 1916 Company. Welcome and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email us tmosso@the1916company.com for purchase and pricing and availability details. Today we discuss a watch made as you see it here from 2004 to 2008. Its predecessor with brass caliber was made from 01 to 04. This is the FP Journe Octa Chronograph, the predecessor to the Sontograph. This is part of the Octa Automatic series, and it is a chronograph built on the 5-day base. In the discontinued 38mm case, we have a discontinued model in a discontinued case size, and there is lots to love. Taking a good look at the watch, 38mm in diameter in platinum, 10.3mm thick, and from lug tip to lug tip, 44.8mm with a 20mm spacing between the lugs. We'll throw this watch on my wrist, which is 16 centimeters in circumference, and it's quite easy to wear. I'd recommend it for him and for her. This is a unisex option, and you can see how the lugs are nowhere near the edge of my wrist, even though I'm pulling the strap fairly tight. Same thing from over the top, which always exaggerates the width of a watch. And then there's the cuff shot, showing that it's a thin watch with a domed bezel, so easily sliding beneath a dress sleeve. In platinum, with a gold movement and a gold dial. It's a weighty watch for 38mm. It's a reassuring kind of luxury. You know where the money was spent here. The strap, surprisingly, is an FP Journe factory piece in this electrifying orange shoe. We have rectangular scale alligator leather on the top and then round scale on the bottom. And the idea here is that gator on both sides is more expensive but also longer lasting. That's why you see it on the best watches made today. And a watch like this deserves the best. You can see it has a sort of matte finish, a monotone stitch, a folded edge, and then there is a curved spring bar, so you can have a fairly close drilling to the case of the lugs to move the lug pivot centers in further. And then curving the spring bar allows it to move without any impediment against the flank of the case, and the inboard drilling makes it fit better on a small wrist. Taking a look at the buckle, platinum, you can see right here. A very simple implement for adjusting the watch on the wrist. The case, classic Journe. Journe's case designs have been, with only a few exceptions, like the sports watches Vagabondage and the Elegant, they've been very consistent since 1999. We have blended integrated lug profiles that turn 90 degrees from the horizontal to their downturned tuck. They are blended into the case band Calatrava style. We have a domed bezel and case back with the mid-case defined by their overlapping flanges. We have knurled unsigned chronograph pushers, and then Journe's famous unsigned double dimple knurled crown. Domed bezel, everything is in high polish. And then the dial side. We have a silver scale that looks a little bit like cellular division going on the dial here, and I'm pretty sure that is not the biomorphic inspiration. This is a purely functional watch face, and Journe had something very specific in mind, which was to create a watch that would give you 60 minutes on the chrono register and flyback chronograph capability with a double-digit date while retaining the thinness for which the octas are known. So the entire chronograph movement component, I'm not going to call it a module because it is integrated into the base plate on the dial side, but only adds 1mm to the thickness of the caliber. And so all this is hidden underneath the dial. You've got a 60-minute chrono register, which is a rare thing on chronographs. And then this is the kind of chronograph that we call flyback. So you reset and then restart without first stopping, resetting, and restarting. The idea is that you can time things that occur in rapid succession, so that is very useful. We also have a white gold dial base, and the dial is actually made of white gold. It's got a granular sort of texturing for a matte finish, and then we have this polished steel bezel on the top and bottom of the dial. Polished steel, really mirror finished with dial side assembly screws for the dial, which you can see there, and then for the bezel, which you could see all over the place. Taking a quick look, we also have a flush double disc date. It does have a quick set function through the crown. And the best way to describe this chronograph is that it's a sort of column wheel chronograph, but the column wheel is very similar to the one on the Patek Philippe 28520, which is to say, instead of having a wheel with crenellated towers, imagine flattening that and then extending the towers outward so it looks like almost a flattened flower with petals sticking out. So it looks like the flattened bloom of a flower with the petals sticking out radially, and the actuation of the levers and the horns and the clutch is by those outcropping extensions of the wheel. So it's not a column wheel, but it's also not a tiered cam like you'd find on a 7750. It's sort of a hybrid of the two, but again, it's very similar to the column wheel that you'll find in a Patek 28-520 caliber, so take a look at that to get the idea. I believe that this is a form of lateral clutch, though the action is incredibly subtle and I can detect no jump or stagger when I activate this chronograph. The fact that the chronograph assembly is only 1 millimeter thick leads me to believe that is some sort of oscillating pinion or lateral clutch, and I've only seen the dial side of this watch in a state of disassembly. It was easy enough for me to judge how the column wheel was put together because it's one unitary stamped piece. It was much more difficult to see exactly how the clutch operated in a disassembled state, but vertical clutches tend to be thicker, and I do not believe that would fit in a 1 millimeter chronograph assembly. Turning it all over, you can see that the movement is rose gold, and part of the consequence of this Octa caliber being designed from the beginning to turn complications is that there was a necessity to offset the winding system somewhat on the reverse side. It was a consequence of the way things were laid out on the dial side. So this looks like it almost might be a 3/4 rotor of some kind, but it's not, because you can see it's got a conventional winding bridge and the rotor sits atop the bridges and the plates. So it's a off-centered superimposed rotor. Rose gold movement, 18 karat bridges and plates. There was that break in mid-2004 when Journe switched over from brass movements to gold. The bridges and plates are 18 karat. The barleycorn guilloche cut and polished rotor is 22. 120 hours is the chronometric power reserve, and then it'll actually run for about 160 hours before it stops, but you want to keep it in that 120 hour zone for best timekeeping. So we have a free sprung balance with a large amount of inertia. It beats away at 3 hertz, but it makes up in inertia what it lacks in beat rate. It's 5 position adjusted, which is the same as you'll find on a chronometer. It beats away at 3 hertz. It's a big, heavy balance. And then we have an array of finishing, including beveling, circular Côte de Genève, engine turning in several sizes on the base plate. We have the guilloche on the rotor. We have polished screw heads and satination on the wheels. All of this water resistant down to 30 meters, though probably not a great idea to submerge it. Now you can see this is the French-made Eleanor case. Before roughly mid-2008, Journe cases were made in France by Eleanor, a company that had associations with Journe going back to his pocket watch days in the 80s. So you can see we've got the Eleanor maker's mark there, and then we've got the French double eagle hallmark. And then we also have the Swiss St. Bernard head hallmark. So we have the assay stamps of 2 different countries on there. That's what that is. You can also see this has a discontinued feature of Journe cases. From 99 through about 2005, the year of the case's manufacture was drilled into the case back. So you can see this says 05 and then C is the reference. So we've got a lot of discontinued features on this discontinued model. Discontinued model, discontinued case size, discontinued 1302 driver base. The difference was 1300 was brass, 1302 was rose gold, 1303 around 2007 went to a unidirectional winding system. This is the old bidirectional winder. Then we've got the French hallmarks, the Eleanor case, and the year of case construction on the back. Case construction and watch assembly are usually pretty closely coupled in a temporal sense. They tend to occur one after the other, but not always. If you want to know more about this watch, I can tell you from my experience, speaking to people at Montre Journe and elsewhere in the collector community, that only a few hundred of these were made. But I want to reference the true scholar of this model, a man named Sean Mehta over at Watch for Moi, has done an extraordinary job of compiling total production, production of individual variants, and cumulative changes through the production run, and I cannot recommend his work enough. Definitely check it out. If you love this one, though, and you want to buy it, reach out to me. I am Team Mosso at the 1916company.com for purchase and pricing details.